The story of human civilization is usually told as a straight line. We moved from hunting to the deliberate cultivation of land to create the food surpluses needed for early cities. This surplus supposedly allowed early societies to settle, diversify their labor, and eventually build the first religious temples. For decades, historians pointed to the Golden Triangle in the Near East as the starting line. It is the geographical ground zero where wild wheat, barley, and lentils originally grew. But the dirt in that triangle holds a paradox. Archaeological evidence from this region contradicts the established timeline of human progress. The physical remains reveal a different sequence. In the Near East, the monumental temples predated the farms. The investigation into this shift centers on two archaeological sites, Abu Huraira in modern Syria and the stone complex of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. These communities existed over 12,000 years ago, situated on the Anatolian plain and its surrounding steppes. Both locations show societal shifts occurring during the same period. Yet forensic botany proves that these populations lacked domesticated crops. The builders and inhabitants were hunter-gatherers. Their diet relied on foraging and processing grains that remained in their wild genetic state. Without the existence of farming, an external pressure must have forced these foragers to change their way of life. At Abu Huraira, a successful settlement of foragers suddenly began behaving like farmers. The soil beneath the site, dated to 12,900 years ago, contains glass impact spherules and scoria-like objects, materials that only form at temperatures exceeding 2,200 degrees Celsius. These temperatures suggest an asteroid or comet airburst shattered the atmosphere, triggering an environmental cataclysm across the northern hemisphere. This impact initiated the Younger Dryas, a period that plunged the Earth into 1,200 years of cold and dry climate. Resource-rich environments transformed into arid steppes, destroying traditional hunting grounds and wild food sources. Facing starvation, the inhabitants of Abu Huraira began to aggressively manage the surviving wild grains to sustain their population. While climate shock provided the push, the genetic birthplace of modern wheat on the slopes of Karakada suggests a different motive. The simple wild plant contrasts with the architecture of Göbekli Tepe, a site built by people who had not yet domesticated their food. The logistics of the site required organizing and feeding a workforce without the infrastructure of permanent agriculture. This was a ceremonial center rather than a living settlement. Its maintenance required long-term coordination between surrounding tribes. Construction was likely organized through work feasts. The promise of communal food and brewed beer served as the mechanism to attract and pay this labor force. Religion provided the pull. The desire to build these monuments forced early societies to gather and manage wild grains at a scale that exceeded basic survival. Farming was not a sudden invention, but a slow evolutionary phase called pre-domestication cultivation. For 1,500 years, humans tended and weeded wild plants without physically altering the crop's core traits. A feedback loop took hold. By harvesting the best wild seeds for feasts and replanting them near construction sites, humans initiated a biological change. This chart shows the complex unrooted networks used by geneticists to track domestication. It demonstrates how multi-generational interaction slowly forced evolutionary changes, locking crops into a domesticated state. Agriculture emerged as an accidental byproduct of immediate survival and social habits. The evidence from the Near East realigns the timeline. Civilization and religion acted as the primary drivers of agricultural development. The Neolithic revolution was a cycle of mutual reinforcement, where the demands of ritual and the trauma of climate change ultimately bound humans to their crops. A field of wheat is the living genetic footprint of prehistoric survival. Modern civilization grew from the desperation of an apocalyptic shock and the labor of prehistoric devotion.